you over. That's what they're hoping for. They want to shutter your mind and shackle it to the floor. It's not hard to figure out the lies you're being told. There is a playbook, an agenda, a blueprint, a goal. So open your eyes wide enough to see you're the target they are aiming for. You're the enemy. Now in order to defeat them and take back what is yours, you must expose what is evident, what is clearly coming forth. There is a good, there is a bad, there is a side you have to choose. Don't underestimate what they are willing to do. Don't underestimate what they are willing to do. It's a new world that's coming when the old world's dead. The empire is burning down, we're hanging by a thread. It's time to panic, to react, to stop this war. Humanity is rising and the truth is coming forth. Whoa! Television's there to bide your time. There are lies on top of lies just to rule your mind. The water's unfit to drink, the food is unfit to eat. There is a reason they don't give you time to think. There's a reason they don't give you time to think. It's a new world that's coming when the old world's dead. The empire is burning down, we're hanging by a thread. It's time to panic, to react, stop this war. Humanity is rising and the truth is coming forth. Humanity is rising and the truth is coming forth. Whoa! Solid proof. With the camps to keep you in, the laws to keep you quiet. Tyranny is here, there is no choice to deny it. But what comes next? We head into the long night. In the info war, we have just begun to fight. But what comes next? We head into the long night. In the info war, we have just begun to fight. In the info war, we have just begun to fight. It's a new world that's coming when the old world's dead. The empire is burning down, we're hanging by a thread. It's time to panic, to react, to stand once more. Humanity is rising and the truth is coming forth. Humanity is rising and the truth is coming forth.
Welcome to Awake Radio. Me and my parents and friends are here at Awake Radio to help people understand the dangers of chemtrails, GMOs, and many other things we are faced with on this planet Earth. Did you know the government is bad? You want to know why? Because they don't like us speaking the truth. Awake Radio was created because we're concerned about what some people are doing to destroy humanity. We all do shows here to help people get a better understanding of what is happening in our world. Thanks for tuning in into Awake Radio, Street Talk for the awake and aware.
Okay, welcome this Tuesday edition of Organic News here on Awake Radio. I am Catherine April Waters, my YouTube channel, April Waters with 2 T's. So I'm going to introduce, we have some really good guests back with us for the second time, is William Binney. He was on in June, I believe, after his panel at the Left Forum here in New York City. William Edward Binney is a former highly placed intelligence official with the United States National Security Agency who turned whistleblower and resigned on October 31st of 2001 After more than 30 years with the agency, he was a high-profile critic of his former employers during the Bush administration. William Binney continues to speak out during Barack Obama's presidency about the NSA's data collection policies and continues to do interviews in the media regarding his experiences and his views on communication intercepts by governmental agencies of American citizens. In a legal case, Binney has testified in an affidavit that the NSA is in deliberate violation of the U.S. Constitution. And that's the short version of your biography. Thank you for being on Awake Radio, William Binney.
Well, thanks for having me back.
So the first thing I actually kind of wanted to get to seeing is that it's an update was the recent hacking into the SIM cards. You know, so they're not actually spying on people less since all this stuff has come out. It seems that they're spying or just continuing to spy.
Yes. The SIM card, of course, gives them the capability to read the content of what people are saying. So, I mean, that gives them the keys that they have. So, the point is that this has been an ongoing process for quite some time, and it only demonstrates that they've been after content, even though they've been saying they aren't getting content. They, in fact, have. I mean, there's just more evidence of it. Just the storage, in fact, is another indicator. I mean, the amounts of storage that they're building all around the country is evidence of content collection, because content is what really takes up space in storage. So this is just clear evidence that basically they're after the content of everybody in the world. I would also say that this is having the SIM card, which includes your SIM, your identification for the device, and the keys for it. That kind of combination gives a way of tracking you wherever you move around the world, whether you're using a cell phone or a computer, a mobile computer device, any like those panels and things like that. Anything like that can be tracked using this kind of device or this kind of data, which means it inputs directly into a program called Treasure Map, which is the objective of Treasure Map is to map every device on the network around the world all the time.
Right.
That is, they want to know where every device is minute by minute throughout the day, day after day, which allows them to trace you as you move around. Even with your cell phone in your pocket, if you don't, it's still being traced as you move from tower to tower, and with GPS, they get more accurate locations and things like that. That's what they're acquiring and assembling, and that's what the program Treasure Map is. That gives them the when and where you are when you do something. And when they collect the data and the content, that tells them what you're doing and perhaps even why, and even perhaps give some idea of a wham kind of issue. When you're talking about writing articles for magazines, you think of who, what, where, when, and why, and wham. And that's exactly what they get from all of this kind of data.
And they are, though, in fact, making the haystack larger.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I keep drawing the analogy. I say, if you pull together all of the intelligence community or agencies in the different countries that are cooperating here, that means NSA, GCHQ, and like BND or others around the world that are perhaps participating. If you assembled all of their analysts, you might come up with 20,000 analysts to look at this data. And if you think about the numbers of people that might be involved around the world, that's probably approaching 4 billion. So if you want to monitor 4 billion people all the time, and you have 20,000 analysts, you divide it out. Each analyst has to look at 200,000 people.
Right.
So that means they're totally dysfunctional. They can never do that. It's impossible. Well, in fact, they don't do it that way. I mean, they focus in on a certain set of people to focus on, maybe 1 million to 2 million, and those are the ones that they focus on. But it's not uniquely divided among people. Everybody does the same 2 million. So again, they make themselves dysfunctional in that way.
And I'm like I was watching an interview that Tragedy and Hope guys did with you, and you know, at least it was a 2-hour interview, and in about an hour into it, you pretty much just kind of summed up exactly what was going on. Right, the dysfunction that they want, because they just want to expand, like they want to find excuses basically so that they have reasons to expand themselves and build another facility in Bluffdale, Utah. And then you mentioned another one, a newer one, I believe, in Fort Meade. And there was another a one in Texas also. So they keep wanting to convince the public that they're needed and find excuses that they are needed when they're actually not. Like,
that's right. The new one in Fort Meade is 2.8 million square foot. It's almost 3 times the size of Utah. And this is not unique only to the United States. I mean, this kind of philosophy is being spread around the world by NSA and the intelligence communities and everybody that they're associated with around the world. For example, in the local shootings in Paris, what they're doing is using that to say we need more people working on the problem. We need more money here, so they're going to give €1 billion and add 1,000 people, and they're going to add or try to get more data. Well, again, instead of doing a disciplined, focused attack on the networks around the world to find out things that are important to look at, they're doing this bulk acquisition, which simply buries them in more and more data. Right. And it's not a philosophy that's unique to us. I mean, we started it, I guess, along with the Brits. We were kind of the core to start it, and that's just spread around the world. And now everybody's making themselves dysfunctional, thinking this is the right path to take, and in fact, it's a path leading you to failure.
And you called it the greatest weapon for betrayal and oppression. Did I get that right? Is that a right quote?
Well, it's basically the greatest. It's like I liken it to J. Edgar Hoover on super steroids.
Yeah.
What that means is they have evidence and data about everybody on the planet virtually. Anybody that's doing anything with an electronic device, they have data on them, and so that gives them leverage to do things like blackmail or influence people directly or indirectly. Or if they, like the KGB used to do, if you don't have anything, if you don't have some problem that you're ashamed of or that they can use for leverage against you, they'll look for somebody you care for and try to find something on them. And that's been the strategic, that's been the standard way that the KGB would operate. So, I mean, these are totalitarian procedures down through history. Nothing's really new here. Right.
You compared it to Soviet Russia, and that the U.S. has even more ability today to spy than they did the Stasi in Soviet Russia.
Yes. In fact, I from time to time I point out that Wolfgang Schmidt, a former lieutenant colonel in the East German Stasi, had commented about the NSA surveillance program, and he said to us, meaning us being the Stasi, to us, this would have been a dream come true. Right. And he said that because, the Stasi used to have individual folders, paper, handwritten, and records of each individual East German, whereas this is more up to date, it's more accurate, it's more complete, it's more interactive, it can be manipulated and mined, and so it's much more useful than the hand records that the East Germans had.
And just to, kind of give like a history. So you were with the NSA for 30 years and then blew the whistle and left in 2001, shortly after 9/11.
Yes, I was actually, as a civilian, I was there for 32 years. In the military, I was there for 4 years. So, I had to leave after the 9/11 simply because they started spying on everybody in the United States, and they called it a covert program and kept it limited knowledge of it in Congress, and nobody in the courts knew until early 2002 when they told the senior judge there, Colleen Catelli, I can't remember her last name, but she was the only one on that court told. That's why after it was exposed by the New York Times in December of 2005, why Judge Robertson resigned within a week of that newspaper article coming out, because obviously he felt like he was duped and used by the government, because he was a member also of the FISA court, but nobody in the FISA court knew about it except the senior judge Colleen Catelli. I can't remember her last name, but so that tells you how they were keeping it secret. What they were doing was picking on certain people that would come in and agree with them, or they wouldn't. They could convince them that they should participate. Once they got co-opted in, initially that included 4 members of Congress, the chair and ranking members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, one of which was Nancy Pelosi, who later became Speaker of the House. And that's eventually why she said when she was Speaker that impeaching George Bush is off the table. Because she was a participant in these programs from the beginning. So that's the kind of leverage they got. And once they got that, they got people rotating into those positions, senior members in Congress and House and Senate. And once they co-opted all of them in, once the first series of them agreed or didn't object, the next series coming in, would be told, well, everybody before you agreed, you should agree too. So that was kind of leverage to get them in. So that grew the numbers of senior members of Congress who were involved. So now they have to support the programs and support the administration and what they're doing. Otherwise they're exposed too. When in fact, from my view, this is a direct violation of the constitutional rights of everybody. They're all violating their oath of office, and they all should be impeached.
Exactly. So again, 9/11 is the foundation of all of this, and they're really like, milking 9/11 for all it's worth. But like you pointed out and you made clear that, Tom Drake, who actually started working at the NSA on the day of 9/11 of 2001, and just a few months, I think it was 8 months after he started to work there, that he found the evidence that they knew of 9/11 beforehand, and they could have stopped it.
Yes, that was in their databases at the time. It's just that they didn't know that it was there.
They didn't? So
no, because again, when you make your data pulls, if you were an analyst, for example, and you did it's like a Google search. If you do those kinds of returns, called dictionary select, I think is the terms they're using still. But if you use that kind of approach, you get mounds of material that isn't even relevant to anything, just by matching words in text. So that just dumps all kinds of things on you, like a return on a Google query, because you may get 100,000 to a million returns. Well, you can't, and if you do that every day and get that kind of output every day, you can never get through the material. So you can never necessarily say, I've found all the relevant material in that pull that I made today, because you can't get through it. So you don't really know. And that's what happened, that all that data is still in that database and was there all along, but the analysts couldn't get through the data that they pile on them to try to figure it out. That's why they're making them dysfunctional.
Right.
And now they've added orders of magnitude more data for them. So it's even more difficult.
Yeah, so they're really kind of exacerbating their own incompetence by taking the clear data that they're supposed to be looking for and deliberately burying it on purpose and saying that they can't find it.
Yes, but you have to remember, though, that from a management standpoint, if there's another failure, that's just more leverage to get more money and build a bigger empire.
Yeah, but if they're incompetent, why, and dysfunctional, why doesn't someone say, well, you're dysfunctional and incompetent and you're making things worse. Why should we help you to expand?
Yeah, but see, that's not the argument they use. The argument they use with Congress is, well, we need more money to fix this competency problem.
Well, that's right. Exactly.
So it's like a bureaucratic approach to solving a problem, which is not to solve the problem, but to keep it going so you keep getting more money.
Well, as long as they, a lot of people have that mentality that money solves all problems. When you're giving this money to, it's who the money is being given to. So if you're giving the money to incompetent people, it's not the money that's going to solve problems. It's the incompetent people are going to be exacerbated.
That's right. Yep.
I would like to, you started to talk also about COINTELPRO back, with Hitler, and kind of, again, like comparing all this stuff and, lying. And once you just tell the lie over and over again in repetition. So in a way, it's repeating the lies over and over is another kind of way of burying the truth and not wanting to find the truth.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, I basically looked at what was happening here and said fundamentally we're creating a parallel country to the Weimar Republic that was there, just after World War I, and then till the Nazis came in 1933 with Hitler taking on the chancellery. But one of the parallels I was drawing was to the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, Section 1021, that allowed the president to declare anyone a potential terrorist and have the military incarcerate them indefinitely with no due process. Well, that's exactly what Special Order 48 issued by the Nazis in 1933 after the Reichstag fire said, and that's exactly how they got rid of all their enemies. That's how you slowly evolve from a democracy to a totalitarian state, those kinds of initiatives. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Like, national security letters where any local Gestapo person can write an order and have it obeyed and no one's supposed to talk about it. Yeah. Well, that's been challenged in court and is in fact unconstitutional, but they'll keep issuing them as long as people will abide by them. And so as long as it doesn't get challenged in the Supreme Court, where if it did, it would be advertised countrywide, and then people would start to object to these things and or not obey them. So that's all part of that process too. So it's a continuing sequence of events that are all basically justified in secret with secret interpretations and so on. So
you said something about suing in criminal court. Like some people tried to sue in criminal court, but they made it the NSA have like immunity because they made it retroactive. They retroactively said that what they were doing was not illegal.
Yes, that's right. That happened with the just at the end of 2008 when Bush was going out and Obama was coming in, and the telecoms were getting sued for the violations of the law that governed privacy rights of the subscribers of the companies. And in order to stop that, because the law could assign up to a $5,000 fine and up to 5 years in jail for each occurrence. Well, that would mean that, for example, AT&T with 320 million occurrences every day, they could very easily go broke and be in jail forever. So the government had to give them retroactive immunity. After all, the government really went to them and said, give us this data. It's really, they're culpable. Both are culpable in this process. It's just that they're all violating the fundamental principles of the founding of this country. That's just a direct violation of and an invasion of the privacy rights under the Fourth Amendment, also the First Amendment too, of the Constitution. So this
is what I kind of don't understand is how they're always protecting the freedoms of the people and using 9/11. Oh, we're protecting the people, and meanwhile they're doing the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, it's exactly what the Nazis said in 1933.
Gee, it's really scary. But you mentioned AT&T and the man Mark Klein. he was the one that refused to turn over information to the NSA.
No, Mark Klein was the technical person at AT&T in San Francisco, and he exposed to EFF, I believe it was, the outline and diagramming of how they were tapping into the fiber network in the San Francisco AT&T facility and passing that data to the NSA room there so they could collect all the data passing on the fibers.
And
the one you're thinking of is Nacho. He was the chief CEO of Quest.
Right.
And he was approached in. This is kind of important because it showed intent prior to 9/11. He was approached in February of, according to the court records anyway, he was approached in February of 2001, about 7 months before 9/11, and was being asked to turn over all the information he had on his subscribers. I don't know how many Americans that would be, but that'd be a few million for sure. And so he refused and said that he would comply with that request if he got a court order signed by a judge.
Right.
And they refused to give that to him, and so they went away. And so eventually they went after him to put him in jail. And I think the message there was just like what they're doing with whistleblowers,
right,
trying to keep them quiet. In that case, it was to show other CEOs of other companies what happens if you don't cooperate.
I mean, it's just such blatant criminality. It is unbelievable. You also said that they wanted to spy before 9/11, or they were spying before 9/11.
They wanted to. I mean, that's what the Nacho experience told me, that they were after and wanted to spy on U.S. citizens prior to 9/11. But they used 9/11. 9/11 was the big leverage. They could use that for leverage and to fearmonger everybody in the country into believing what they were saying so they could execute anything in secret and not be challenged. Certainly the political parties wouldn't challenge it because nobody at that time wanted to look weak on terrorism.
Jeez. Again, terrorism is just like such a loose term because they create so many enemies around the world. That's a subject we can, talk endlessly about. The next question is, you talked about drone feeds. Like you can watch where a certain drone is. Like the NSA has the ability to watch and see where so many different drones are, like hovering around the world.
Yes, I think Edward Snowden said that in Citizen 4, and he said that they had these live drone feeds, near real time. I mean, there's some delay in getting it back, so there's a slight offset in time, but not much, where you can see the flying drones, mostly reconnaissance, but you'd also have armed drones that go out and they would use them to kill people. So you could watch that live, yeah.
Okay, I'm just want to make sure I'm getting everything in. Facebook, I wanted to really focus on Facebook and stress to the people. I mean, I'm completely guilty of using it myself. And how the public is just helping the NSA to just know everything about you. Facebook and Twitter.
Yes, I think FBI is extremely happy to be able to look into Facebook and Twitter. So yeah, all that material is, especially when it comes time to when you're developing, facial recognition kinds of things. That also helps because usually people put pictures of themselves there.
Yeah.
So that's an additional set of information to help track people.
And so they came after you. They tried to get you under the Espionage Act.
Yes, they drafted an indictment to charge us with conspiracy to expose classified information.
And you were.
Although they never said what that was, or in the indictment it doesn't say anything because somebody at the DOJ felt very bad about that. So they They eventually snuck a copy of the draft indictment out, and we have that. So.
And Thomas Drake also, they tried to pin stuff on him, and they weren't able to attach any evidence to it.
Well, they falsified evidence in his case. They also tried to do that with us.
Right.
In our case, though, I found that evidence, and also found evidence of malicious prosecution, and wanted to threaten them with that and charge them with it in court. So I was waiting for the indictment to come down so I could level that charge in court against them with the evidence I had. In Tom Drake's case, they found paperwork in his office, in his home, that was from NSA and marked unclassified. And so what they did was they drew a line through the unclassified classification on this thing and stamped it secret or top secret, and then accused him of having classified material.
They are so unbelievably criminal.
Yeah, well, Jim Bamford did some research and found that in the public domain, the NSA had already put that material out there as unclassified.
Exactly.
And so he presented that to the court, and their entire case fell apart. I mean, I really thought they should have been charged with the at a minimum, the court should have said you're in contempt of court at a minimum. They should have also charged them with a felony of fabricating evidence to put people in jail.
I mean, why don't they? Why don't they? I mean, they are criminals. They deserve to be arrested like anybody else.
Well, that's how we would all be treated. But we have this elite group of people in this country who are exempt from the law.
The Fairview program, it has 80 to 100 tapping points. Can you explain what that is?
That's where, like the facility in the San Francisco room, the AT&T building, where they put the splitters on the fibers, or prism type affairs. You can think of it as prism, where it takes a fiber coming in, where all the light's coming in, and then it'll duplicate it down two paths. That splits the signal but duplicates it in two different directions. One meaning one would go the normal route to the communications network. The other went to the NSA room where they could capture everything on the fiber.
Right.
Well, that means that they're doing this across 80 to 100 tapping points across the United States, and it's basically distributed with the population of the country. This is just in the lower 48 states of the United States.
So I'm going to bring Dr. Robert Duncan. He's been listening. He wanted to be on with you. He was on at least a month or so ago. Dr. Robert Duncan attended Harvard College, graduating with honors in computer science, pre-medical sciences, advanced degrees in business and science from Harvard and Dartmouth. He conducted research in the fields of neural networks, virtual reality, EEG-controlled robotics. His projects have included algorithms of echelon, CIA natural language parsing, classification of document content, IRS formula for red flagging audits, writing artificial intelligence to code to automate tracking the Soviet nuclear submarine fleet and all water vessels, work integrating HARP. HARP is the gigantic antenna. I think it's in Alaska, where they screw with the ionosphere. With SIGCOM, and SPA-WAR. He has worked on projects for the Justice Department connecting local, state, and federal databases for the tracking of terrorists. Again, it goes, he was on Jesse Ventura's Conspiracy Theory on True TV, the episode titled Brain Invaders. It features Robert, who worked on CIA projects related to MK Ultra and mind control. Okay, Dr. Robert Duncan, you're on with William Binney.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to just say how honored I am to be on the show with my hero, one of my living heroes, Mr. Binney. And I want to congratulate you on the Sam Adams Award of Integrity and Intelligence, and I helped fund your movie Silence, and I got to see that recently. And I think you should be an actor.
Well, thanks very much. It's good to be on with you too. So I mean, I've heard of you too, and people have been telling me that I should be in contact with you and talking.
Yes, we definitely need to talk more. So I'm going to actually start out, rather than talking about myself and my research. I wanted to ask you a couple questions. Why is privacy important? And I know Edward Snowden was asked that, and he had a really good answer. And I'm curious how you might answer that question.
Well, to me, privacy is a fundamental requirement to be creative and innovative, especially in a society where, I mean, you can take the examples of the Soviet Union and East Germany as the most recent classic cases of where people got so depressed and so withdrawn from society, or they limited what they did in society because they felt they were being watched all the time.
Yeah,
and so that destroys creativity and innovation in civilization.
You're absolutely right. Good answer. Very good answer. I have another question for you. Knowing what you have been through, would you be a whistleblower again?
Absolutely, but I'd probably do it sooner rather than later. Much like Dan Ellsberg, Dan regrets not having exposed some of the material faster because, every year he waited. The Vietnam War was going on, and we were losing thousands of people over there. So, that's in essence. If you don't expose things, bad things continue to happen.
Well, you're right, and people ask, what made you a whistleblower? Why do you feel this conscience of society? Are you born with it, or is this something your parents instilled in you? Why would you put yourself at risk for the betterment of other human beings? Not a lot of human beings think that way.
Well, I grew up in a small town in central western Pennsylvania, and basically what it meant was everybody knew everybody. That meant that you as a person, you were what your character is.
Yes.
And that really revolved around the values that you held as a person. And so being a citizen of the United States, I mean, I picked up the freedom outlined in the amendments in our Constitution, and said these are the fundamental values of that I believe in. That's very strongly and support, and that's why I devoted my life to protecting this country. It was because I was supporting the Constitution, not an administration and not an agency. I was supporting the Constitution and the rights of people to that are outlined in that Constitution, and that was just burned into me from the very beginning. I mean, my father was in World War II. My uncles were in World War II, so they fought for that also. So I mean, it's just a way of life,
I agree. I mean, you have no purpose in life unless you have values, and so that makes sense. All right, one more question, and then I'll start talking. Do you remember Clapper perjuring himself in front of Congress about the NSA spying on American citizens? Do you think he should be prosecuted?
Well, I personally think they all should be prosecuted.
Yeah.
I mean, not just him. I mean, there's a whole cast of characters involved here.
There are, and why do you think they aren't prosecuting them? Is it just tradition that presidents don't prosecute prior administration?
I mean, no, it's like I really blame this all on Jerry Ford, President Ford, because he pardoned Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, after he left office, was indicted under charges and was going to be taken into court. And Jerry Ford pardoned him, just as he said, because it would spare the country. Well, no, that's not why. He pardoned him because he wanted to have the same capability to make whatever decision he felt necessary to do. So he wanted the freedom to make his own decisions. And so what he was saying to Nixon and everybody in the future was, You as the president of the United States have a get out of jail free card, and that's the next president.
Yeah. Good answer.
So I blame it all on him. But there's a whole host of people who were co-opted into this. I mean, when the president says we have to do something, a lot of people line up and will just do it, no matter what.
No matter what their oath was. That's right. Yeah, we have domestic enemies for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, and that's why the oath of office of the president and everybody else in Congress and everybody in the military and so on says, you will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to get into something a little more technical into my field. So I was an artificial intelligence expert and, worked for a lot of the departments, the three-letter words or three-letter acronyms. If you can hack the endpoints, be it a computer, electronic device, or a human mind, what use is encryption for the individual against a powerful, tyrannous government?
If you're well, it really isn't unless your end result is offline and not accessible.
Okay. Yeah.
That's really what it is. You have to have an air gap between the computer that's got that decrypted version and your decryption versions code to do that. It has to be offline. Otherwise, you're vulnerable.
Yeah, and all the systems I worked on for the government, they were always offline, and we had to change the encryptions every 24 hours. And so I think we're going to have your friend John Kiriakou. I'm mispronouncing his name, I'm sure.
Kiriakou, yeah. John
Kiriakou, on later. And both your fields relate to what I study. I've been studying people that have been tortured, about 2,000 people here. I've interviewed about 1,000 people, and of how interrogation and torture is done to them, and it follows exactly everything that's been released from the interrogation memos. There were 1,000 pages. I've read through that, and the recently released Senate intelligence report on executive summary on the tortures that they've done, and it follows exactly. And so there's this new technology they call no-touch torture, and it's sort of like enhanced interrogation. They've just relabeled it. They've called it something else. It's a newer technology, and but they use all of the same scripts and harm to the individual's mind. Do you think that maybe the NSA's collected all attitude might relate to this? And I have a lot of examples from my interviews of why they may be doing this. It may not have to do with anything about terrorism, but let me give you a couple examples. There are many torture victims, I'll just not mince words here, torture victims, say that they have language morphing from their relatives. So let's say the NSA or CIA, whichever branch, collected samples of their relatives' voices and used them during an interrogation. Now, this is a very well-known tactic. Is that a possible reason why we need privacy? That the government can, use these alterations of data, as you said. And I'm going to go even further, that I was intimidated when I first did this research. They went to my father, the perfect man, an OBGYN, and they said his phone calls from his private office, which he has guard dogs and gates and everything else, were going out to a known terrorist group. So they tried to intimidate him, and I think they were trying to intimidate me, say, you better not, research this and you better shut up or we're going to do something to your family, set you up.
Standard KGB tactics.
Yeah, standard KGB tactics, exactly. But so a lot of what I study is something called hypergame theory, and a brilliant man named John Nash, and there was a movie made about him, although it was inaccurate. He created game theory, won a Nobel Prize for it. It was used in both economics and warfare, and it's a way to walk people down a certain path, assuming they're rational. So a lot of what I do is expose these tactics of how to walk someone to their death, how or their suicide, or I also study silent assassinations and other things, but it gets much more evil than you're talking about.
Oh yes, no. I this was the whole. I've been calling it more like the main objectives are for NSA. I mean, after the wall fell, and the Soviet Union crumbled. They needed to have an enemy, so they needed to find some enemy to justify the existence of such a large agency and such a large intelligence community. So that's when it morphed. That's when it morphed over to the terrorism thing, and then they had so many technical problems dealing with the digital world. So that gave them a whole new set of things to work on and a whole new set of much larger targets to work against. And so that made their day. Now we have an enemy. Now we can continue to grow and build and get a bigger budget, and everybody. It's all happiness management after that point.
Yeah, you got it, and it's kind of sad. I mean, we live in as Eisenhower said, he had a great speech on.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Beware the military-industrial complex, but now it's military-industrial and media complex. The mainstream media is not covering, what they were supposed to. Weren't they supposed to be sort of the fourth branch of government, report to U.S. citizens of what was going on?
Well, they're conforming to the narrative out of the administration.
Yes. And why do they do that? Is it fear of their job?
Because they're governed. A number of them have a lot of dependence on the FCC regulations, and so the government can cause them a lot of problems. And if they start doing this kind of thing, they might not get access to people that they'd like to get access to learn things. So they've got many vested interests to keep everything going the way it's going and not be too disruptive, I guess. That's the way I put it.
Yeah, you're spot on.
But it means we don't have a free press. That's a free inquiring press, which is really what the public is depending on, and they're not getting that.
Yeah, it's sad. I've traveled the world, and I would always return to the United States and look at our news and be shocked what wasn't being reported and the misprioritization of the news that should be reported.
It's all part of the whole plan, which is population control.
You're right.
That's really what totalitarianism is all about, and that's what these procedures are all intended to help facilitate.
I know, it's so sad, but yeah, you're completely right. This is about totalitarian control and social engineering, and there's this CIA operative, Mark Phillips, I think said it best. The Nazis didn't lose the war; they just had to move.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they did, didn't they?
Under Project Paperclip. Yeah, that's right. Let's see. I think I have one more question for you. Oh, well, it's kind of for myself.
Okay. I had one for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, why don't you ask me?
Yeah, I've been talking to any number of folks around the country here who are suffering from various things. Mostly, they believe it is some kind of radiation weapons and things like that. Uh-huh. So, and since I think you have some background in this area, I personally don't, but I've got the discipline working crypt systems and so on to say, well, we need to find some mechanism or some way of verifying that these things are actually happening. So in other words, we need some kind of device now. Kirk Weeby's a friend of mine, and he was also an NSA whistleblower. He knows of some devices that are relatively cheap. They can detect emissions in certain spectrum ranges of the spectrum. But there are other ranges that devices would be more expensive to try to use or try to acquire to detect things. But I think we need to try and set up or put together some way of getting perhaps people who have expertise in the field together to try to assemble some list of things that people can do to try to verify one way or the other that things are or are not happening. So that it could be used as evidence to take into a courtroom if they want to sue someone.
If I could just interject really quickly, this woman, Katie Singer, she spoke at the Voices of Hope conference, I think it was, at Cooper Union. I forget the name of the conference, but anyway, she wrote a book called An Electronic Silent Spring, and she does like a lot of radiation detection type stuff with the towers, the cell towers, and how much radiation your cell phone is actually putting out.
Well, that's all fine and good, but the problem is we're polluted with electromagnetic radiation, and the signals are different in how it's going to affect biology. And there are a lot of very sophisticated techniques being used to influence the human nervous system and the brain, and basically modulating in an external signal to these individuals. And so most people think, oh, I'll go to court. Let's go to the Supreme Justice and we'll get it eliminated. But you got to remember back with the MK Ultra experiments, the CIA destroyed 70,000 records, and it just happened that they misplaced some records in the financial group, and they were exposed to some of the testing they were doing. And the U.S. government has a long history of experimenting on U.S. citizens. But this is actually worldwide, and they're trying to get a diverse swath of all economics, educational levels, demographics of every kind in order to improve the probability matrices of this weapon system to control human beings. And so this will be the ultimate, slavery of humankind. And back in the 90s, there was a colonel from one of the intelligence agencies that stated the Russians were bombarding us with microwave psychotronic signals to placate our population, just meaning to calm them down, thinking we were going to go to war with them. So we started doing the same to them. And so human beings are susceptible to these frequencies. And there's plenty of research that your listeners can do to find out that this is true. But it's we want to believe we have free will, but advertising works on us. And, we buy their products, so we see through, hear through radio or see through television. But this gets much more complicated and in-depth when you talk about these individuals that are very directly targeted with this weaponry, and they're just saying if they can control their lives, break them down, turn them into Manchurian candidates. And the only reason I can think of why they're trying to create violent Manchurian candidates like Myron May or Alan Alexis, and there's been several others, is to take away gun rights. Now, almost every civilization, including the Nazis, took away gun rights before they became totalitarian. And so I think it's just part of the program, that they're trying to exercise, instill fear in the public, take away our rights, do anything you want to, just keep us safe. I would say, well, go to prison. You're safe in prison, aren't you?
Okay, I was going to, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Binney, what did you think about, it's a little bit maybe off topic, but not completely, what Obama said about, those who knew about the torture and who put the torture program together. When asked about if anybody was going to be prosecuted, he starts talking about, looking forward and, looking to the future, and not holding, people accountable. And I just think to myself, looking forward, it's like, tell that to all the people that are basically overflowing in the jails in the United States. He doesn't want to look forward when it comes to, just ridiculous, petty non-crimes. But, if you right, like violate the Constitution and spy on Americans or torture people, he talks about looking forward.
Yeah, I want to expound on that. Dick Cheney, and I don't mind using the evil man's name, he said it's acceptable to torture 25% innocent people in order to get no actionable intelligence. I just think that's evil. That's my personal opinion. But.
Well, it is, but also look at it this way. Here we have, and you'll be talking to him, I guess, shortly, John Kiriakou, who was the only one who in any way exposed torture. And he was convicted and put in jail, and all those who committed the torture were given immunity.
Right. I mean, how...
To me, this is a national disgrace.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree.
So if I could just, I'm sorry, I get like really, really like, so this is what I'm saying. I mean, this is clear. I mean, it is crystal clear what is happening. And, I mean, like, this is not confusing. I mean, there it is, like, right in your face, what's happening. I mean, so if the people don't step up, like, what are we looking at? Like another World War II, Nazi concentration camps? I mean, it doesn't get any clearer.
Well, we're looking at the disintegration of civilization, I think.
Yeah.
If we don't have law and order and hold people accountable, if we don't hold people accountable, how can if they want actually what it turns out to be is anybody who doesn't have a position sufficiently high enough in the government will be held accountable. Everybody else is exempt.
Right.
I agree fully.
But meanwhile, it's the people that don't even really commit crimes, and the jails are just filled with people getting arrested for complete non-crimes. Like, I don't even know what to call them really. If I could just mention an article, Chris Hedges actually did an article and an interview about that they're trying to get prisoners into debt while they're in prison, making them work full time, paying them, I don't know, some ridiculous fee, like $1 something a week, and then charging them like ridiculous fees to like make phone calls and buy like their own, sandals while they're in jail, like things that normally are supposed to be given for free, they make them pay for. With ridiculous, ridiculously high fees, all designed by private companies to get the prisoners into debt so that even after they finish their sentences and get out, they can still go back to jail for not being able to.
Yeah, that's right. We were never supposed to have a debtor's prison. That was part of our revolution against English. And in fact, that's a question you should ask John when he's on next. He actually spent time in prison, and I'm sure he has plenty to say about that.
Right. I mean, it's again, just today they were talking about on Democracy Now! the detainee, the immigration prison that they have in Texas, where they're holding like completely overflowing the immigrants and the conditions. The toilets are overflowing and there's so many, it's overcrowded and it's all private companies that are doing it and profiting off of it.
Well, we imprison more than any other population in the world. So we're number one in something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, this is also a kind of another hidden secret, another one of those things done in secret. That is the agreements between the courts and the companies and how they can make money in that process. I mean, that's just another disgraceful thing that's happening. That's all. I mean, it seems like this is how society degenerates when you allow these kind of things to happen and everybody sits by and silently acquiesces.
I've been saying
when in fact
for
people
4
need to
years.
speak up. I mean, that's when things change. If you speak up in mass, that will make a difference.
Right.
So, Mr. Binney, do you think it's apathy of the American people or cowardice?
I don't know if I'd call it more. I think it's more of the case that they don't feel that they have the power to do anything.
Right.
You know, I think it's more that case than anything else. When in fact they really do. They just don't realize they have it.
Oh.
Exactly. Like they're not taught it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I mean, Dr. Duncan had just asked you just a little while ago, what made you speak out at the NSA? Is it innate? Were you born with it, or was it the way that you were brought up? I mean, of course, your upbringing has so much to do with it, like you expressed. So to me, that's exactly what it comes down to. You know, it's what people are made out of. I mean,
that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Everything, I call it genetic modification. Like human beings are being genetically modified instead of being organically grown. It's what people are made.
That's right.
I realize, to me, it's just the simplest way of putting it. And if you do not raise, because that's what I started talking about and tried to really take an issue with, decades ago, was the breakdown of the family system and how, there's really like no quality. There's no standard of quality, in families, with just parenting and just being like good leaders and really raising, children to be quality, people, stand up to the plate kind of people. And I always grew up like, oh my God, like I didn't want to turn out the way that I was being taught to be, and I was doing all kinds of things. Like I wanted to be a step up to the plate kind of person, and I've been like challenging and resisting things all my life. And look where it's gotten me, like I'm an activist. Like I barely have any money and I don't even have a
Yes, but you have purpose and you're bettering the human race for what you do.
And I need people to donate at least $1 to my YouTube channel. That would be nice.
I'll donate.
Yeah.
I donated Bill Binney's and John Turcow's movie to make that move. So I'll donate to your channel.
So Mr. Binney, like, so the people, they just have to start to step up, and I mean, they have to do it. I mean, there's no other choice.
Yeah, if you don't, we're going to be just acting just like the German population did in the 30s when the Nazis came in. You're going to acquiesce to something that you don't really want, and you're going to end up with it.
Yeah. And, it's just this giving away and giving up of your power.
Well, this is what happens down through history. This is absolutely nothing new.
Right.
I mean, this is how powerful people take over.
Yeah.
That is, good people acquiesce. They stay silent.
And the thing that people have to realize, because this is where like you got to stop falling for, the uniforms, the titles, the status that, people just tend to turn over, because someone has some office, some political office or whatever, and when, like I'm always like trying to tell people, you got to live more of an organic life. Like, I just don't know how else to say it. Like,
I always live by the motto: eliminate pride, greed, hate, lust, envy, and gluttony, and then you can be a good man.
Some of that's hard to get rid of.
Oh, it is. No, none of us are perfect.
That's right.
Because it amazes me that it's just like Bill Binney was saying before about it was the way that he was brought up that helped him to speak out, but it's also the way that people are brought up to do what they do and jump on the bandwagon to be a part of all of this stuff and to exploit people and to imprison people and to spy on people.
Unfortunately, it's just human nature. I mean, unless we find a transhumanist solution where we can make people better people, I mean, obviously good family and parenting, this is going to continue. It's gone, as Bill said, throughout history. People will follow the leader, and they won't do a check or balances of their own, hopefully moral compass. And it just happens, and it's unfortunate. But it doesn't matter if it's Nazis or the Americans or the Russians or the Chinese, and this is why we have tribal warfare.
And we should also point out that to question authority in times of crisis is not unpatriotic.
Right.
It is what people in a democracy are supposed to do.
That's right.
We're supposed to have debates.
Thomas Jefferson had a good quote about that. You're right. Yes, a dissidence is the highest form of patriotism, I believe he said. So, yes, you must question authority.
People with power deserve to be scrutinized even more.
Yeah, I agree with that statement as well, because they've been entrusted with the public honor, and they have to be scrutinized more because they have more power over us.
Exactly.
And when they mess up, they've got to be held accountable. I agree totally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's because it's literally like a disease. It's like the more they get away with it, it's like the more concentrated the strain of, sociopath is just going to constantly keep like increasing and getting more concentrated. I wanted to ask William Binney, did you see American Sniper?
No, I didn't. I did not see that movie, no.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, and
I won't watch that because I know it's untrue. It's just Hollywood. This is Hollywood.
So it's things like that. Also, it's almost like a romance. Like I just think of it like like Love Is Blind. I mean, people it's very difficult. I'm not saying it's easy to accept the fact that your government is trampling all over your rights, and the idea that we could have another World War II and Nazi concentration camps is not a pleasant thought. But the only way that you're going to see to it that doesn't happen is to acknowledge it. I mean, I've seen it all my life. Like, people have this belief that if you turn away from ugliness rather than acknowledging it, like everyone does the opposite. They turn away from the ugliness. It's like, oh, that's negative. And be positive. Oh, everything is going to be okay, kind of thing. And like, that's the answer. And the more they do that, the more they're actually giving this darkness, room to just grow.
Yes, well, that gets back to people. If they want to continue to have a democracy, you have to stand up and fight for it. You have to keep it going.
Exercise.
You can't. It's not you have to participate. That's what democracy is all about. I mean, otherwise, you tend down through history. If you don't participate and ensure it continues, you're going to lose it. That's what history tells us.
Exactly. Go
ahead. I'm sorry. I wanted to know, Mr. Binney, do you have children?
Yes, I have 3 boys. Yeah, they're all grown and gone. But
okay, yeah. I think a lot of us feel like we are trying to leave a better country, a better world for the future generations, and I don't see much of our generation standing up to leave that better world, and that's what depresses me.
Well, I guess I'm probably a little older than you are, so I think, my father was in World War II, and I grew up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, so I was I'm very close to the. I was very close to that patriotic sense of that carried us through World War II, even though there were some questionable things that went on there. Still, the whole concept of participating and standing up and doing something was a part of that. That is, help yourself, get out and do it, the work ethic and things like that. So that was very strong back then. And I think what you're getting at there is that's the kind of values that are being lost today.
Yes, that's exactly what I was getting at.
I think the work ethic is kind of still strong, but now it's transferred into, instead of working for the good or justice or community, it's just working for the dollar. It's like the dollar is just the bottom line in everything now.
Well, but then also you have that close to half of the population of the country are receiving some form of support from the government. So that's what I'm getting at. That back in those days, people wouldn't even go on welfare, for example, because they feel ashamed.
Right.
They couldn't help themselves. So that was the point, that they felt that they should be individuals and stand up and help and stand on their own feet.
Yeah.
It was much stronger, I think, back then.
We get into economic theory, and the diversity between the wealthy and the poor has become quite divided. And, I probably can't talk too much about this, but economic warfare was one of the topics that I worked on. But you do it to other countries, not your own.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Binney, can I just ask you to reiterate what you had said with the Tragedy and Hope interview about that the government has sold out the freedoms of the people for money? Can you?
Yes, well, that went back to a program that I developed internally in the government when I was working there. And it was a very focused, disciplined attack against the digital communications network of the world, so that you would respect everybody's privacy as much as possible and focus in on known or bad guys and their attributes and zones of suspicion around them, so that you would at a minimum pull in a very small fragment of what they're doing today. Then you never have to do something like Bill Bluffdale. But you see, the program I developed for a little over $3 million, about $3,200,000 total from beginning to operational, and so that didn't spend a lot of money. So it didn't justify, what? Yes, well, it handled the volume, velocity, variety, which was posed as the problem to Congress to justify getting billions of dollars. Okay, and so they felt, of course, that they had to continue the problem so that they could continue justifying getting billions.
Right. So
they had to kill that program that I was doing.
Yeah,
so that's what they did.
I got to add something to that. I was in a secret base, and there were about 14 Navy or NATO admirals, and they were laughing that they spent so many billions of dollars to track whales. So they come up with any excuse. The Congress.
So I just wanted to clarify that was your thin thread program as opposed to the Trailblazer.
Yeah, and the assertion I was making that once they killed that, they in effect were saying, I'm trading the security of people of the United States and the free world for money.
Right. I mean, that's a pretty powerful statement.
Well, that's why the thin thread Trailblazer comparison requirements report out of the DODIG's office is almost 97% redacted. Yeah. Because it would demonstrate all those issues we just talked about there of trading money, trading the security of people of the United States for money. It would substantiate all of that, and it's all in that report that they've redacted almost completely. So they're trying to hide their what they've done, and they're doing it through redaction and claim security and classification. So that's the mechanism they're using to do that. How they cover their crimes. That's all.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are either one of you are available for much longer, but John Kiriakou is actually available to come on if you wanted to.
Yeah, bring them on.
Why don't I have to go here shortly. I haven't had anything to eat yet, so if I could back out here, and then Dr. Duncan, you can talk to John.
Sure, and it was such a pleasure meeting you. I can't tell you how honored I am. Thank you for.
Well, I think we
being
could
on
keep
this.
in touch later on too. So.
Yes, I have your email. Yes.
Okay.
And
Good.
I'm just, Mr. Binney, as you're leaving, I'm just going to inform listeners that you're going to be in New York City for Freedom to Connect. It's coming up in a week.
First, second, and third. It's actually this 1st and 2nd of March.
Okay. So if people want to just look up, it's either F, the number 2, the letter C, or Freedom, the number 2, Connect.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Get it.
Thank you, Mr. Binney, and I'll see you there.
Okay. Thank you, and take care. And goodbye to your audience. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
He is such an awesome man. I just love that guy.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Kiriakou. Sorry. Hello?
Hello, how are you?
Hi, John. Thank you for being able to be with us.
Oh, I'm very happy to.
We still have Dr. Robert Duncan on. He has more time, but Mr. Binney had to hang up.
I'm sorry.
So I'm just going to introduce you really quick. John Kiriakou, you just recently were released from prison after serving, was it 30 months?
23 months of a 30-month sentence.
Okay. Former CIA analyst and case officer, former senior investigator for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, former counterterrorism consultant for ABC News, blogger for Huffington Post, the first U.S. government official to confirm in December of 2007 under the Bush administration that waterboarding was being used to interrogate people at not just at Guantanamo, but black sites all over the world. On October 22nd of 2012, you pleaded guilty to disclosing classified information about a fellow CIA officer that connected the covert operative to a specific operation. You were the first person to pass classified information to a reporter, although the reporter did not publish the information. You were sentenced 30 months, but served 23 out of the 30, and it was in Loretto, Pennsylvania.
Correct.
So thank you for being able to be on Organic News here on Awake Radio.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Dr. Robert Duncan is still with us. So, yeah, we were having a really good conversation. And so, okay, first, how long were you working for the CIA?
I was there for 14 and a half years.
And how was your time there?
I'll be honest with you. I loved the CIA. I felt like I was really making a contribution, really making a difference. And I worked with some really great people. I worked with some psychopathic lunatics, but most of them were really great people.
And so, right. I mean, like the people were there, they were really, interested in doing the right thing and going after, right.
When I first got to the CIA, I kept my politics to myself. I'm a lifelong progressive, pretty hardcore progressive, and I kept it to myself because I was afraid that I wouldn't really fit in, and it might make it a little difficult to get along day to day. And the longer I was there, the more I realized that the place is it's full of progressives just like me. I've always maintained that the Republican Party and the conservative movement in our country do not have a monopoly on patriotism. Liberals are patriots, and I was very proud to be there. And for a long time, I felt like I was really doing great work for an important cause. And then September 11th came, and everything changed.
What, like, exactly, like, what would the contrast be?
Well, I had switched to operations from analysis in 1998. And after the September 11th attacks, we began opening secret sites, and then torture entered the lexicon.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't the same. It was as though so many senior level and even mid-senior level CIA officers had something to prove, that they could be tougher and meaner and angrier than anybody else. And it just became an ugly place.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And so it was in 2007 that you exposed waterboarding as that was happening, when it was actually they were completely lying and saying that they weren't using torture. That they weren't doing any of this stuff.
That's right. The president actually came right out and said, "We are not torturing prisoners," and I knew that was a lie.
Right.
That just cracks me up that most Americans focus on waterboarding. They don't focus on shocks or burns and other physical beatings, or them to be naked and perform sexual acts in sexual manner, and duct tape over the eyes, and hypothermia and heat injury and mock executions and threats to family. I mean, it goes on and on. They don't get Medicare, medical service. They don't have food or water. I mean, it goes on. The list of tortures are like, I have, 4 pages of torture techniques they use, but we focus on waterboarding, and that's not even the worst of them.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I agree with that. I always thought that there were even approved torture techniques that were worse than waterboarding. We know now that sleep deprivation actually caused some prisoners to lose their minds, and they were able to participate in their own defenses.
Absolutely, you got it correct there, sir.
And then the cold cell resulted in the death of one prisoner. It was so extreme.
Yeah, well, I didn't even mention rectal feeding, which one prisoner died because of the forced trauma, and they bled to death through the rectum. Yeah, no, I mean, this is torture, and I can't believe the U.S. government calls it by a new name, just a euphemism, enhanced interrogation. There is no difference.
And so they arrested you again under was it the Espionage Act?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I'm sorry, did they arrest you under the Espionage Act?
Yes, actually, I was charged with 3 counts of espionage. All as a result of having a conversation about torture with a reporter from the New York Times and a reporter from ABC News. They charged me with espionage despite the fact that the reporter said in the article that he wrote that he had interviewed 24 current and former U.S. and foreign intelligence officers. For whatever reason, the Justice Department decided to go only after me.
And you had pointed out, I believe it was on Democracy Now!, that this is not a case about leaking.
No, it never was.
It was right. It was more about just exposing the torture.
Yes, the CIA never forgave me for exposing the torture program in 2007, and the Justice Department began investigating me just a few days later. And that investigation lasted until January of 2012, when I was finally charged with 5 felonies.
And you had also said that people leak classified information all the time, and you mentioned names like David Petraeus and what was the other guy's name? Mineta?
Leon Panetta.
Oh,
He was the director of CIA before Petraeus was.
And so, right, so it's they just basically like make up the rules as they go.
They do. And the truth of the matter, and I don't mean to make light of leaking, but leaking is what makes Washington operate. People leak all the time, every single day. And most of the time, those leaks are done on purpose because they make whoever happens to be in power look good. They make it, these leaks make it look like